Your drip is just a water spring. You know I drip different, just the 7 seas. I deal with life different, make that lemon squeeze. Went off for my style and identity. Better bounce back. Stay up, counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going on track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. I got his band like I'm Barry Bonds. Running through the money, but the money's long. I don't love it, but I need it, keep it coming on. Only family, me and friends, we don't get along. I put that on my name, that I put them on. I put myself on stage and they sing along. I might book a session, do 100 songs. I'ma let you hear them just to prove you wrong. On track, now we going way up. W's as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up. We going on track, now we going way up. Now we going way up. Now we going.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Wake up.
Yeah, wake up. So my name is Matt Druin of Oak Grove Development. This is my my partner in crime.
Harold Bain from FIAP, Financial Intelligence Over Poverty.
And what is that? Financial intelligence over what?
Poverty.
And what does that mean?
Well, it means we want to all be financially intelligent, correct? We do not want to be any type of way, have a mindset of poverty, okay? Financial intelligence, we wanted to start doing this because a lot of times schools don't teach these things. And usually we have to get into, networks and things like that, and reading books and things like that. And so we have to find a way to educate ourselves, because a lot of times the school systems don't teach us. So that's where we started. Yeah.
And tonight, what we're going to talk about is something that I really didn't realize that was very, very important with me starting out, not just as a real estate investor, but in business itself, is the value of team, right? When you're new, this is a magical thing, right? You can leverage somebody else's years and years and years and sometimes decades of experience. Who's a master in something here? Somebody raise your hand. Derek, I know you're a master in something, right? Okay. You can leverage that mastery to basically advance yourself, right? And even if you have no experience or anything like that. And I learned that. And the thing is that the key to it is an acronym. Stands for RKR. Who knows what that means? Anybody? Do you know what that means, Harold? I've told you this before, man. All right. It means rock stars, no rock stars. Okay? So when you're building your team, your aunt or uncle, maybe you got this uncle that's like, does a little bit of taxes, does a little legal work and that type of thing, may not be the best person to put on your team, right? Your aunt who's the realtor and that type of thing, she may be very, very nice, but if she's not a rock star, then you're not going to be able to leverage that to benefit yourself in terms of your progression as an entrepreneur or a real estate investor or anything like that. So, same thing with lawyers. There's tons of different lawyers out there, but there's real estate attorneys, there's tax attorneys, there's civil attorneys. All of them have different focus areas. So you want to make sure you align with that. And what rock stars means is that you want to identify out there the people that are doing what you want to do, they're living the lifestyle that you want to live and are killing it, and find out who they know. They can refer you to who they use and who's on their team. Absolutely. And people ask me all the time, I love giving referrals to people, to other rock stars, because it benefits my friends that I've built those relationships over the years. So we have my friend Orlando Ortiz is going to be talking just about that, as well as his real estate journey. So Harold, what can you tell me about your team you built over the years?
I'll say when I first started, I didn't have a team, and it was hard. Okay. It was hard. It was always me having to do everything. Okay. And I don't know if anybody else is an investor in here, real estate investor. Yeah. You guys have, in the beginning, usually it's you doing everything. You're the plumber, you're the electrician, right? You have to call and find tenants, things like that. And once you get once you get a team, oh my gosh, so much easier, and it frees your time up. All right. So it's worth the money. People are always like, oh, but you got to pay these people. I don't care. I want the freedom. Okay. So you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. That's the biggest thing I've learned. You do not want to be that guy. All right. You want to surround yourselves with the smartest, the most intelligent people you can. For instance, the guy just came in late, but but yeah. So a team is vital, especially if you're planning on growing your business or investing a significant amount. I mean, you're going to need a team around you.
So without further ado, we have Mr. Orlando Ortiz. Orlando has accumulated a real estate empire of 35 residential rental units, right? Can I round up to 40, maybe? All right. He's going to be at 40. He's going to be at 400 soon. But Orlando also works full-time, okay? So he's been able to do this while working full-time as well. And you can only do that by leveraging the experience and expertise of other people. Absolutely. That's what we just talked about tonight. He's got a great presentation for you. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to Mr. Orlando Ortiz, and give him a round of applause for us, please.
Thank you. All right, can you guys hear me? Yeah? I think Matt's empire thing is a little bit, overstated. But hopefully after today's presentation, you get a little bit of taste of what I've been doing and how I've been doing it. So as Matt mentioned, I do have a full-time job. I am a manufacturing manager at the Gleason Works and been doing real estate for the past 10 years, among many other hats that I wear on a daily basis. So without further ado, I'll kick us off with some questions to the crowd. This is more of a true and false, okay? So you could say whichever one. So you must learn to run and understand numbers for real estate. True or false? True, all right. We'll come back to these later. You need a lot of cash to start in real estate. False, all right. Depends what your definition of a lot of cash is, right? You got to reassess your strategy as you go along. All right. You can do it all by yourself, Harold? All right. You need your own money. All right, we'll talk about that in a second. You need to know everything before you start. And finally, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. All right. So I'll tell you a little bit about my journey to kind of where I am today. Obviously, everybody has their own kind of roadmap to kind of where you are today. So I was born in Puerto Rico, as some of you guys know. In 1991, my family, my parents, along with my brother and my sister, they decided to take a 1-month vacation to Rochester. Some of my cousins that are here, we came to visit them for a month. Who leaves Puerto Rico to come to Rochester on vacation? Well, we did. After about a month here, my parents said, oh, by the way, we're going to stay in Rochester now, make Rochester our home. We never went back. I think it was about 5 or 6 years before I actually went back to Puerto Rico on vacation, and we made Rochester home. We left everything behind, all our friends, our belongings. I did not know any English, so that presented a different, a challenge for us, right? The good thing is we had some family here. In 1992, I started working or volunteering at my uncle's store at the age of 11. He had a grocery store that was very well known in Rochester, along with a liquor store. And, in that, it provided me an opportunity to learn the value of hard work, responsibility. It was a bit of an unknown, right? Because at the age of 11, I just wanted to try to get a little bit of cash, not that it was a lot. But what I learned was, again, the work ethic, responsibility. I was able to interact with customers in a familiar setting because a lot of the customers were Spanish speaking. So I was able to continue to be, comfortable in terms of the language, and while at the same time learn, English. I worked at my uncle's store volunteered at my uncle's store for 5 or 6 years. In 1995, I had a choice of high school. And at that time, and I don't know if it's still the same case, and I'm sorry for those of you who went to East High School, but at that time, a high percentage of the people that graduated middle school went to East High School that were of Latino descent. So I knew all the Latinos were going to East High School, and I said, no, I really don't want to go there. I know too many people. Let me go somewhere else. So I went to Edison Tech. Edison Tech, any Edison Tech alumni? All right, in the back. So at Edison Tech, again, trying to throw myself in an unknown situation, I learned machine shop. I didn't know anything about machining, manufacturing, and it really, tied into my engineering background. And from that, I was able to learn, how to work on my hands, make parts, work on my own. I was still a bit of an introvert, believe it or not. And I really didn't mingle with a lot of people. It was kind of, just me. And that machine shop program allowed me to, still fulfill my dream in terms of engineering and learn something that I knew would be valuable. At my senior year of high school, I started working at Gleason Works, which I just said I'm still working there. So I started as a co-op there. Again, it throw myself into an unknown situation allowed me to think about things differently. It was very challenging for me to jump from my uncle's store that I had volunteered with for the last 5 years and to I say the real world. That had been my kind of my glue with my family. I knew the people there, the customers. I grew up at my uncle's stores, just like a lot of my family did. So jumping over to the Gleason Works was a bit of a challenge for us, or for me, and I was able to again adapt to a new environment, learn new responsibilities, meet new people, and really cater to some of those aspirations that I had for manufacturing engineering. 1999 came around. I had another decision to make. I went to MCC, went to college, did some manufacturing engineering, and then I went to RIT. Still, when I went to RIT, I was still kind of a bit of a loner, so to speak. I really didn't like interacting with a lot of people, and really that's where it catapulted me to kind of where I am today. At RIT, I met a lot of Latino friends, again, providing me that comfort zone that I had. I joined a fraternity, Lambda Alpha Upsilon, which kind of catapulted my ability to really network with people, project manage, and do many, many other things that I've been doing ever since. In 2003, along with my fraternity, I started doing a lot of volunteer work. Another one of the hats that I have is I am the president of the Puerto Rican Festival, and I've been a part of the board for the past 16 years. I started that because of my volunteer work through my fraternity and other things that I have been a part of. Volunteering gave me that opportunity to, again, meet new people, expand my horizon, develop some of my skills that I could then translate to my career, which I did. In 2005, I was able to get more into a managerial role within Gleason and really kind of take off my career that way. Again, a lot of these skills were easily transferable from a volunteer perspective into my career. In 2008, I would say it was the first exposure that I had to real estate. Two of my good friends that are here today, me and Carl, were kind of the first one that kind of exposed me to real estate. They both owned real estate at the time, and I was able to, interact with them, go to some showings, see some of their work that they did, some of their with their own hands, and see the type of things they were doing, which kind of gave me that opportunity to, again, be exposed to that real estate environment. And last but not least, in 2011, I was ready to buy my first house 3 years later, which was great. The one thing that I look at when I see this timeline, and I didn't really pick that out until I put it all together and just kind of presented it, when I look at from the time I came in 91 to 2021, that's 30 years, right? I just talked to you about a 30-year cycle of my life that, as we're going through it, you don't realize kind of the baby steps that you're taking to get to where I am today. And then I'm not even talking about yet the next 10 years, right? So, that's kind of the things that as you're looking at your own life and, what kind of building blocks are you doing to kind of get to where you are is definitely, important. So 2011 comes around and I decide to start buying my first house. Admittedly, I didn't have a why I wanted to do real estate. I don't know how whoever has real estate here and if you had a why initially. For me, I was hanging around, my friends. They were talking about real estate. I couldn't really fit in with some of the conversations they were having because I didn't own real estate. So I felt like I was kind of out of the loop, but I appreciated the fact that they were talking about real estate, kind of exposing me to that environment, and I was curious, right? So for me, my why came out of, pure curiosity to some degree, which is fine. Later on, as I'll explain to you, what my why came about. So as far as my first buy, there's always that fear, right? You have the fear of the unknown. For me, it was, I had done 3 years of research, conversations, hands-on stuff, helping them out in their own properties. And, I was ready to buy, but it's still there was still that fear of second guessing, what I wanted to do. Where was I going to get the money? The analysis paralysis that some people quite often do, and I still do today. So I had to take a pause and really reflect on, did I do everything, running with some of my colleagues that were doing real estate and kind of getting some of that feedback. And, some of that is kind of that nervousness of that first buy. So this was a house that I first bought. It's over in the Beechwood area off of Main Street. I bought it in March of 2011. Again, as you see here, I bought it for $35,000. Out of pocket, right around $13,000. And as of today, the value is about $70,000. Given today's market, maybe it's a little bit higher, but just conservatively, 70K. So I had that house for now 10 years. This house at that time was fully rented. There was very little maintenance. There was a lot of positives with this particular house. But yeah, I still had that fear of that unknown, in which, I'm sure some of you in the crowd are experiencing today. So as I got this first house and really started getting a feel for it, and again, connecting with some of my colleagues that had already done real estate, gave me a sense of comfort. They helped me out a lot. And shortly thereafter, shortly thereafter, I bought my second house. That was 5 months after I just bought the first one, right? So much for fear, right? It's kind of that first jump that you do, or that first thrill ride on a roller coaster that you take, and afterwards you're like, all right, I've done it once. It's kind of the same thing. And I remember talking to my wife, and she's here, talking to her about that next purchase. And obviously there's more fear from her, because she wasn't really involved in that day-to-day operation from maintenance and all that perspective. And I'm telling her, no, it's okay, it's a good deal. And again, talking to other people, we ended up buying the second house. What's happening here? We bought a second house. That one was purchased again in August of that same year. That one was purchased right around for $28,000. Out-of-pocket cost was around $11,000. And I sold that house for $50,000 recently, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So after that, I waited 2 more years. I bought another house. The first house again was a double. The second house was a single, and the third house now was a double. I bought it, as you see here, in December 2013, $28,000, $11,000 out of pocket, and now it's worth $75,000. We'll talk a little bit about the power of leverage, but just to give you an idea what that is, in 2019, I leveraged the second house that I purchased, the single house. I sold that one again for $50,000 and bought a 5-unit building for, as you see here, 160, investment of 40. Now it's worth 225. So I traded a 1-unit, single family for a 5 over the years, right? That was 7 or 8 years later. But again, understanding that power of leverage is something that, as you encounter in your real estate, education, you need to understand that power of leverage and how to utilize it to your advantage. So as I talk about kind of what the roadmap is that I took and I find important, there's a few topics that come about. Personal finance, it's important, right? You need to know what are assets, liabilities, your credit, your history, all those things need to be in line to be able to understand, where you are before you even get to that point. I talk to my son all the time. He says, what's an asset? A house and an asset. What's a liability? Credit card, right? So, you got to talk to your family members about financial literacy, right? I know myself, I didn't grow up learning about financial literacy. At the age of 8, I was hanging out in the mountains of Puerto Rico, just having a great time, not really understanding what even financial literacy meant and the importance of it. So as we talk about generational wealth and knowledge, that's just something that, as we're growing in your own families, continue to share that, because that's how we break some of the cycles that we've had over the years, when it comes to families and being able to share that, so that, he's better off and your families are better off when you're older. Financial education is also key from a real estate perspective. Understanding what the key terms are from bookkeeping, what are some of the financial terms associated with real estate. Tax planning is a big one. I know a little bit later on, they're going to talk a little bit about next month's event as far as tax planning. I find thrill in reading about tax planning and real estate. If you're not in real estate yet, but there's a lot of advantages in, from the tax side that you should be taking advantage of. And again, if you're not the expert at it, or at least understand what that is, somebody else may or may not tell you what those are. So reading and understanding what that is, as I mentioned up there, reading is key. I hate reading. My wife knows this. I hate reading with a passion. I did find something that works. I can read a book and listen to the audio at the same time, and that works for me because my mind can't wander because I'm listening to it and I'm actually reading it, so I'm occupied. If I do one or the other, it just doesn't work out. So if you hate reading like me, think about doing the audio and reading at the same time. Networking, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things that I did initially was network. So attending seminars like this, workshops, joining different real estate groups that are in the area were key for me in terms of getting exposed to different people that, you know, were either starting off just like me or had already done bigger and bigger deals that, you know, then they were like scary to me, right? As you get more and more comfortable with doing deals, you become less and less afraid or fearful of doing those type of things, and it becomes easier. Finding my why. So eventually, you know, I as I started getting more and more of my portfolio going, I started to think about, you know, what can I get? Where can I go with this? For me, financial independence was key. You know, I mentioned generational wealth. Again, that's important to me. I want to make sure that I leave my family, you know, in a much better position than where I came from, which is key. And who knows the term FIRE? Anybody? And from a real estate? That's right. So FIRE means financial independent, retire early. That's my goal. So that's my why. I want to retire early. I think you were talking about retiring in a couple sessions ago, Harold. You know, and that retiring doesn't mean I don't want to work. It just means I don't want to go to a 9-to-5 job. That's the only difference, right? I still want to work. I still want to be able to have the flexibility and command my own schedule to be able to do what I want. If I want to go on vacation for 2 weeks, I don't want to have to feel like, hey, I have to ask for, you know, time off, or I only get 3 or 4 weeks a year, you know, that type of thing. So having that flexibility, I may or may not need it or use it, right? But just having that flexibility for me is key. Strategy, we talked a little bit about earlier, you know, reassessing your strategy. You know, for me in the beginning, it was more like, I just find deals and, you know, let me just buy a double and a single and a double and kind of just getting a feel what that is. As you go along, you know, you can understand and figure out where is it your niche. Do you like single houses? Some people like single houses. Harold, do you like single houses, right? I like multis. I like multis and up. So, you know, it depends what is your level of tolerance for each strategy. And again, you could reassess that as you go. There's nothing wrong with not understanding that in the beginning. But again, surrounding yourself with people that can expose you to those. So it could be, are you flipping? Are you holding, you know, buying and holding? Are you wholesaling? There's different types of strategies. You know, sometimes I actually have a couple of friends that, you know, they say, I don't want to own any real estate. I have money, right? And I'm like, I could use your money, right? Let me use your money. Let me borrow it and I'll buy something, pay you back your money with interest. That's called a private lender, right? Or a hard money lender. So you don't know these until you start getting into some of these other circles, and people start seeing what you're doing, building some of that trust that people can see that, one, you do this, you know, well. They can trust that you're gonna handle their money and give and pay it back, right? So there's different types of strategies. So it's not a, hey, I'm always want to just buy a house and that's it. You know, some people don't want to own any real estate. They just have the money to finance it for you. Competence. So, you know, initially I can't say I was competent and I heard everything, and I still can't say I am. But over the years, you start becoming a little bit better at different things. So as Harold mentioned earlier, you were doing everything maintenance-wise in the beginning. I try to do that in the beginning, but quickly find out that either I don't like doing something or I don't have the time to do it, or I want to focus my attention on other stuff to be able to grow my business. And we'll talk a little bit about growing the business in a second. Relationships are key. As I talk a little bit about property management, some of the things that I'm doing now in a property management perspective, I got that through relationships. You know, people that I knew trusted in me and being able to manage their properties. They're not here to be able to see those on a day-to-day basis. They're trusting me to make sure that I'm managing their property in the way that they would manage it. So relationships are definitely key. As I mentioned earlier, leverage. power leverage is huge. You know, if like for me, if I could sell if I tell you could sell a single house to buy a 5, you know, all the numbers check out. Who here would not do that? Right? You would? Well, you like single, so you're like, I'll keep my single, and that's all right. That's your strategy, right? But I was able to leverage 1 to get 5, and if you could leverage 5 to get 20 or 40 or 50, you know, that's a way that you continue. If that is your strategy, right? If your strategy is just to continue with single houses, there's plenty of them here in Rochester to have that, right? And last but not least, recognized, and what I mean by that is, you know, over the years, you start getting a good rapport, right? You start getting, as I mentioned, the trust of people, the relationships, that will create maybe other business opportunities for you. For me, when I first started, the first 6-7 years, it was just me managing my own properties. And I think my first property was over there on Cypress, when my best friend here, he was like, hey, can you manage my property? And I said, sure, I'll do it. I've been doing mine, so why not? So that got me started thinking about property management. Over the years, other friends and colleagues have said, hey, I don't live in Rochester, but I want to buy houses in Rochester. Can you manage them for me? I say yes. And over the years, I've been able to build that portfolio, you know, for the last 4 years, to the point where now I'm getting other referrals from them to be able to manage their properties. But again, it starts with the relationships, the good rapport, and referrals. Other people that I don't even know have referred me to other people that, you know, say, hey, this so-and-so, I heard good things about you. You know, can you take a look at this property and see if you're interested in managing it? So what is the value of a team? For me, a better life management, work-life balance, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'm still working full-time. I still volunteer on several boards. I have real estate. I have a family. I have all these different things that the more and more, you know, units I get, the less I have of something else. In the beginning, when I had 1 or 2, you know, properties, I was easily able to manage those accordingly. You know, as you get more and more, you got to start prioritizing what are some of the things that you want to do or don't want to do. As you're going along, there's different opportunities that may come about. So if I'm spending all my time, you know, addressing leaks on a particular property, if I'm spending my time fixing a water leak or electrical or whatever it is, I don't have the time to be able to grow my business by getting other units or building my portfolio from property management. So over the years, I've learned to try and, you know, optimize my circle, my system, identify what my strengths and weaknesses are. If I'm not good at, you know, if you're not a handy person, maybe you shouldn't be the maintenance person, right? If you're not good with dealing with people, maybe you should not just, you know, talk to the tenants on a one-on-one basis, because ultimately you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your tenants, especially this past year and a half through COVID. You know, tenants, you know, there's a lot of kind of leeway when it comes to rent paying and all these things that if you don't have that good rapport with your tenants, it can easily go astray when it comes to your financial, you know, side of things. So definitely understand your strengths and weaknesses, and, you know, create a solid foundation I always think about, you know, find the people that are good at the things that you suck at, right? So, and that's another way of, you know, looking at things that you don't want to do, or that you feel like you're not good at, or they're much better at it and much more efficient. Yeah, you might pay a little bit more money, but that opportunity to partner with different people, expand your network, is going to reward you, you know, down the line. As far as building the team, there's probably 3 times the amount of people that you could think of that would fit the circle. Tax professionals, property management, you know, landlords. You know, believe it or not, obviously we're all in somewhat competition, but not necessarily every single day, right? Because I could learn something from Matt, from Harold, from, you know, Carl, me, and everybody here that has real estate. You know, we can exchange words, ideas, brainstorming, and things of that nature. Maintenance wise, again, if I just don't have the time to make sure that, you know, at 2 a.m, you know, I get a phone call, I call my maintenance person, and, you know, he's here somewhere, he can take care of it at 2 a.m. Or, you know, or schedule at least addresses so that the tenant feels that is being taken care of in a timely fashion. One of the things that over the years, I found it, very important are processes. You know, initially, I'm doing all the financing in a spreadsheet, right? We got Excel spreadsheets, and you're good because you're organized. And as you're getting more and more units, you start thinking, okay, how can I optimize the system, automate things, to the point where now I'm using a software where tenants can pay through a website. They see all the maintenance tickets. They can enter a maintenance ticket. My maintenance person can see those. We can, exchange information very quickly via the software. Again, reduces my, kind of presence of being there, talking to the tenant, and that communication is there. And then the tenant feels that, they're being valued. At the same time, it does bring a different level of professionalism to your operations, because now tenants, they see that they can see all their transactions in a particular software. And again, that communication is there. So think about, as you're growing, you may not be able to afford it in the beginning, but as you're going through your growth, within real estate, understand what are some of the things that you could automate to be able to release, again, some of that time for whatever it is that you feel is a priority in your life. Real estate agents, again, understanding, your real estate agent that, they're, focus on investment properties. So there are a lot of real estate agents that are more on the primary home ownership side of things. So when you go see some of these properties, they may focus more on if you were living in the property. When we look at houses, we don't want to just look at things and just let it be, but we also are not going to be living in some of these properties. So maybe the mindset might be a little bit different than a real estate agent that only looks at home ownership. As I mentioned earlier, over the years, growing your business, actually about a month ago, I did become a real estate agent, licensed real estate agent, something that I wasn't really thinking about doing, but over the years, you kind of just start growing some of the business and understand that might be another opportunity. Not that I want to be a realtor per se, but there's different things that come with some, that license that I felt was beneficial to my business. So again, understanding what some of these licenses and accreditations, may mean to you and your business is important. Relationship with banks, lenders. I talked a little bit about, the private side of things. The relationship with banks, understanding, what banks do what, how do they, what do they look for in your personal side? What type of credit score, what type of debt income ratios that they're looking for is definitely important. So when I go to my bank, they already have my information. I don't have to start that relationship piece. So when I go out there and say, hey, I'm looking to buy X amount of a property, they don't really, flinch at it per se, because they understand me, they know my business. They might also, obviously, they want to look at the numbers and make sure everything's in a row, in line, but ultimately that relationship is there and I don't have to start from scratch. Attorneys are important, obviously, when it comes to evictions, buying houses, selecting the proper attorney is definitely key. And again, the relationship piece is always there. Sometimes I'll email my attorney. Some attorneys may bill you for every little question that you might have. Some attorneys, you built that relationship, they might just answer those questions without a problem and again, keep that relationship going. So, and as I mentioned, there's many different, additional things that you can add to your team here. The key thing for me was I didn't need to have all of these things in place to get started. I did not have all of these things in place as I got started. I lean on other people to refer me to different people, and connect me with different partners that are out there that are already doing it, understanding how they're doing it, how they can benefit me and my business, and how I can help them as well, whether it be through property management or in their own course of buying real estate. Make sense? So going back to the initial questions, again, true or false? Was that? True, all right. Need a lot of cash. Who said with $10,000 or $15,000 you could get started? All right, thank you. Who can get started with zero money down or zero money out of pocket? You can, right? As I continue to look at changing your mindset is certainly different, right? So, let's say, for example, with the 5-unit that I told you earlier, had I done that maybe 5-6 years before that, I probably would not have gotten that building. Primarily because my mindset was not right to be able to look at those numbers, kind of picture, what that could do growth wise. I found the building and then I figured out how to finance it afterwards. Some people try to figure out, I gotta have the cash, and then find the property. I did that initially, and then over the time, I've learned that the other way usually works a lot better, at least for me. What's that? It motivates me, right? So if you find a great house or a great property, a good deal, you can usually find the money somehow. Again, leveraging your network, leveraging your relationships. I know some people that, for example, if some family member has a house free and clear, and I think, Harold, you did that initially. If you're, let's say your parents or somebody owns a house free and clear, that house is worth $60,000, $70,000, maybe let's say 100. You could leverage that, by either getting a refinancing the house, getting a line of credit on that house, and use that money to be able to finance your first house property. So thinking outside the box is definitely an important aspect. But again, if you're not mingling with the folks that are doing it already, maybe your mindset is not there to be able to generate those ideas and think about that from a different perspective. Reassess your strategy. You can do it all by yourself. Need your money. Pause. Know everything. And last, surround yourself with like-minded people. All right. So with that, I thank you for being here. I know we're going to have some questions and answer. Matt, you're going to join me on stage, and we'll have just a conversation here for the next several minutes. So
yeah, so what I'll do is, so we'll take questions in the audience. I'll repeat the questions so just the people on the live feed can hear it. So anybody have any questions for Orlando Ortiz before we wrap up? I know I got a couple questions. Anybody want to get started? Damar.
Orlando's fine.
The single family homes and 5 blocks was talking about it. Is that 1031 exchange or what? How did you do that?
So what Damar asked is that when Orlando went from a 1-unit to a 5-unit and sold that, did he do like a like-kind exchange, or how'd that whole process work?
Yeah, so with a 1031 exchange, you can, buy another house and not pay all the taxes on it, because you can transfer all that cost to the new house. Unfortunately, in my case, I had the one house was under one name, and I was buying a house under a different name. So I was not able to the 1031 exchange. So it was a straight, I paid the capital gains on the single house and had to, ultimately you got to pay for it anyways. But unfortunately I had to pay for it now versus later. But that's how I was able to finance it. But in the meantime, I didn't have the cash, right? I didn't have the cash to be able to buy the 5 and sell the 1 with enough time to be able to buy the 5. Per se. So I had to, go back to my friend that said, I have money, I'll let you borrow the money. So I went to him and said, hey, I need X amount of money to be able to finance this building, walk through the, finances, and be able to purchase the 5-unit and then sell the single, be able to pay him back, 6-9 months later.
So Orlando, follow up to that question. I'm curious, hindsight being 2020, would you have what would you have done differently in that? Would you have maybe refinanced that property and pull out the equity to put down on the 5-unit, or would you have done a 1031 exchange, or what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I would have definitely done a 1031 just to save that capital up front. I would say I wouldn't have refinanced that house. Just for me, that was my only single. I was trying to get rid of single. It was great single for me, but that was not my strategy. So to refinance it was just not part of my even criteria to be able to do.
Yeah, very good question. Any other questions? Yes, gentleman in the back with the tie-dye mask on. Okay. Okay, so what he asked is that did Orlando set up an LLC before he started buying properties? Is that right? Okay.
That is a smart thing to do. I did not do that, and thank God nothing happened on my end. But typically, you want to set up an LLC just to transfer the houses into it. I understand that sometimes initially you can't do that. Maybe you just don't understand what LLCs are for. Maybe some of the benefits that from a from a liability perspective that they provide. Over the course of my growth, I definitely started, buying them into LLCs, but not initially. Not a bad thing. It's just I wouldn't let that hold you back from buying a property.
Yeah, this is a huge question I get that prevents people from, they get this analysis paralysis. Oh, do I buy an LLC? Do I buy my personal name? I think it's just buy the damn property, all right? It's not gonna kill you. So so definitely talk to an attorney. You can get, some people, what they do is that they buy in their personal name and then they quit claim it to an LLC. Sometimes that puts you in default with your mortgage lender. But sometimes I know a lot of people that do it, and there's a due on sale clause with stuff in mortgage documents that, as long as you're making the payments to the bank, they're not going to call the mortgage, right? They don't have somebody in an office there that's searching, all right, what name is this property in, and that sort of thing. There's really not this mortgage police after the fact, like, going around and that sort of thing. But worst case scenario, if they did say, if they put you in violation of it, all you got to do is quit claim that property back to your personal name and then cure that default. You got to kind of get a slap on the wrist. So the one that you don't want to do is quit claim to an LLC and then sell a percentage of your membership interest in the LLC, and then your partner is like, I'm not going to quit claim that back to your name. So definitely don't do that, because I've seen people do that before, and it's not a pretty scenario. So he asked, I'm sorry. So he asked, do you buy most of your properties through the MLS, or do you source them like off market, or like how do you source your deals?
I would say half and half. Ideally, you want them off market, right? In today's market, you want to not compete with everybody else that's out there. So I would say half and half of mine were, through word of mouth, and somewhere on the MLS. Now that I'm a realtor, I can have access to the MLS. Before I didn't have that, I had to work through a realtor. So that's that's something new to me. So I'm kind of getting to know the MLS now and how to research some of those properties. But again, if you can get them off market, it's definitely, important and more advantageous to you as a buyer.
Yeah, there's people here that have gotten great deals in MLS and great deals off market. So it's, David and I just got a property that we basically got 50% of what the asking price was on the property. So if it's a property that's in a good location, meets your investment criteria, that doesn't always happen, but some of the best deals that we've ever gotten have been on the MLS. So definitely don't write it off or anything like that. You want to be searching, leave no stone uncovered. So any other questions? Bill? Liquor store you worked at, where was it?
So yeah, it was at the grocery store first. I was underage. So later on, I did work at the liquor store. It was on Bay Street and 2nd Street. So Bay and 2nd, near between Portland and Goodman. I think overall it was there for about 30 years within the family.
Any other questions? I'll go to Paul and then I'll go to DeMar. So the software you use right now?
Yeah, so I would say the last 6 months I've been using Buildium. So there's Appfolio. There's other ones that cater to real estate. Before that, I was using QuickBooks just on the financial side of things. That worked out going from spreadsheet Excel to QuickBooks. It was a huge advantage. But using Buildium the last 6 months, it kind of took me out to the next level in terms of having all the tenant information on there. They can pay right through the app for free to them. Seeing all the maintenance tickets, they could enter a ticket in. I could enter a ticket in. I could assign it. There's definitely different things, as a rental owner. So some of the property managers or property owners that I have, on a monthly basis, they were calling me, hey, what's the status on this? Or, can you send me a P&L for the month or the quarter or whatever it is? Now I just say, go look in the app. So I try to, not that I don't want to talk to them, but there's more advantageous ways of, there's other ways to obtain the same information without technically, ideally bothering me per se, for some of that information. And it's, real time. So they could look at it on a daily basis. They could see from a maintenance perspective how many are there units, if there's any open tickets, if there's any closed, open, and all that stuff. So it definitely has reduced a lot of my stress when it comes to finances, tenant management. And then on the tenant side, they can see all their bills too. Sometimes I talk to tenants and they say, well, the previous landlord, they didn't even give me a receipt, or, they did kind of some shady stuff. And I'm like, no, I like to be transparent. You see everything you pay, and that way it eliminates a lot of the questions and hesitations.
DeMar.
Stealing this question kind of from like the four questions that bigger podcast that was top at the end of the podcast, but one, what is your favorite book that kind of maybe opened up maybe your mind, and then kind of secondary to that, what do you think kind of restricts people from ever getting started?
So DeMar asked, what's your favorite book that sort of flipped the script in your mind? And would you ask the next one? Oh yeah, what do you think holds people back from like getting started or failing and that type of thing?
So like I said, I hate reading. So but the first book that kind of got me started was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure some of you guys have already read. And again, that was just to get my mindset into thinking about real estate after I was exposed to it, right? Another one I would say is The Loopholes in Real Estate. I think it is something like that. I think Robert Kiyosaki as well has that book. So I read those two books and kind of gave me an insight on different ways to think about real estate, and how to utilize, the legal loopholes that are out there. And to make sure that you grow your business. As far as what hesitate people, I think thinking that you need a lot to start. Like I said, when you look at, $10,000 or 15, depending on what the deal, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot when you leverage, if you buy, let's say $100,000, property, and you only have to put down, 20%, you could leverage and finance the other 80. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But again, thinking that you need a lot more than what you really need. Yeah, right. You pay more than that for a car.
Any other questions y'all have? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is around one of your true falses. So you said it's important to be flexible and readjust your strategy. So how have you taken that advice with like COVID and the current market? How have you been flexible?
Okay, so how has Orlando maybe needed to pivot during the COVID environment or any other point in your life where you face challenges and that sort of thing?
So initially, like I said, I didn't know what my strategy was in terms of what type. I knew I didn't want to flip houses. That wasn't my thing. Now it's just strictly, multis and up. I would say from a COVID perspective, I go back to relationships. I know I talked to some landlords that are having trouble collecting rents, that, they're having nightmares with tenants. I would say primarily, 90% of the time I'm having great relationships in terms of like the partnership with tenants, the communication with the tenants. So from a COVID perspective, I haven't changed a lot. Other than having more communication with tenants as far as, hey, if you're having trouble, let me know. I can connect you with the resources that are out there. I would say from a COVID perspective in terms of rent payments, I haven't really been affected. There's been maybe a 3 to 4 tenants that were behind. I put them in contact with some of the services that are here. They got paid in full. My owners got paid in full, and everybody's happy. The tenant doesn't have to get evicted and kicked out and all that. So I would just say reinforcing some of those relationships have been my biggest thing during COVID, to the point where I have yet to evict anybody in 2 years now.